Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the truck so the wheels are off the ground. Now the wheels don't necessarily need to be off of the truck to do this job, so let's get started. Now the very next thing that we want to do is take an overall measurement of this tie rod end unit here. So essentially what I mean is, I want to know the overall length from one end of this all the way to the other end. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to mark right on the knuckle where the tie rod end goes through. You can mark this pretty much anywhere. It's just going to be the place that you're going to be measuring from. So I'll mark this knuckle, and then I'll come over here and I'll mark this knuckle as well. Now at this point I'm going to take a measuring tape and I'm going to measure the length from one marking to the other. All right, so just take a quick note of that. I've got 58 inches, but yours might be different. Once you have that measured out and the measurement written down, we're going to continue on to loosening up the adjustment sleeve. To do that, I'm going to start with this one right here. Slide this out of the way. Now we're going to move along to loosening these. We can get these out of here. Now we're going to grab some large pliers and turn this. So I have this sprayed down with penetrant. I sprayed both of the threaded areas, and then if you feel along this sleeve right here, you're generally going to feel like a slot that goes along it. Just go ahead and spray some penetrant right inside there as well. Let it sit and do its job. After that, we're going to continue on with some nice long pliers that look like this. Or of course you can use the tie rod tool that has a little hook on it. You can grab onto it with that. Most people are going to have long pliers. Now if when you try to remove this sleeve right here and it doesn't want to come off, typically what you're going to have to do is either heat this up to the point that it's going to be able to break free, or of course you're going to replace the tie rod ends with the sleeve at the same time as an assembly. Now for me personally, I'm just going to go ahead and heat this up and see if I can get it apart. I want to spread these ears and then get these off of the actual sleeve itself. Now we're going to apply heat to right where the threaded area is going to be on both sides. You can try to use a butane torch that looks like this and try to heat it up. This might take a little longer. I'm going to use some torches. There it is, friends. So now it's going to be time to put on our brand new sleeve. Before we can do that though, we want to make sure that we loosen up these jam bolts right here. To do that, I'm just going to use a wrench on one side and I'll use a ratchet on the other side and just loosen it up. Once you have it so it's loose enough it can move around, do the same to the other one. Okay, this moves all around. Let's get it in the truck. Now the next thing we need to do is continue on by coating our threading on our tie rod ends with some copper never sees. Let's grab the sleeve. Putting on the sleeve, something to pay attention to is it can go one of two ways. If you try putting it on the wrong way, it's not going to want to screw on, so you'll just have to spin it around if that's the case. With that said, I'm going to start with one tie rod end. I only want to get it on just a couple threads here, just enough to get it started. Okay, I've got that on there one thread. Let's continue on to putting it onto the other tie rod end. Now if you need to, you could of course push the left side tire. Give yourself a little bit more space to get it lined up. Once you have it lined up, just start screwing it on there. You just want to make sure if it doesn't seem like it goes on the first couple threads, you unscrew it again and retry, because if you screw this one in too far without this one going in, your tie rods won't be timed properly. There we go. Okay, so I've got them both started on there. I didn't have to turn it too many times before this one started on, so I know the tie rods will be pretty close to timed properly. With that said, now we're going to continue turning this to draw in the tie rods closer together, and we're going to continue on by taking measurements from one part of the knuckle all the way over to the other until it's perfectly aligned. What you're going to notice as you turn in your sleeve right here and it starts drawing the tie rod in, you're going to have this bracket right here that's going to be in the way. To remove this, we're going to go ahead and loosen this nut until it completely comes off, remove the bolt, then we'll slide this down the tie rod so we can bring this in the rest of the way. So now what I've done is I've turned in the sleeve so both the tie rods came pulling in until the point where it looked as though both of the front tires were as straight as possible. The next thing I want to do is continue on to checking my measurement. So I'm going to go from my original point all the way over here to the other point and make sure it matches up. If it looks like the measurement is too high, like maybe you had approximately 58 inches before and now you've got 59, you need to continue tightening this in and drawing in those tie rod ends. If it looks like it's in the opposite direction, just go ahead and loosen them until you've got the same exact measurement as when you started. Okay, so now that we have the measurements done, the next thing that we want to pay attention to is making sure that we have this bracket facing down, just like this. The reason for that is because we need this piece to come in and through this area right there. And of course we have our bolt hole right there. So we'll line this all up, make sure it lines up perfectly, and then of course we'll start snugging everything up. So now we're going to go ahead and put this bracket on there. Something to pay attention to is on the tie rod itself, you're going to have like a notched out area, and that's where this bolt is going to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide this down to approximately where it needs to be. Slide the bolt through. If it doesn't go through, you don't have it lined up with the notch. We'll start the nut on there, and then we'll get ready to start snugging everything up. I'm going to start by snugging this one first. Make sure that nut's tight enough that this can't move at all. Okay, now we're going to move along to tightening up our sleeve right here, but before we can do that, we need to double check the tie rod ends. The area that we're going to be paying attention to is in between the tie rod end and the knuckle itself. You want to make sure that the tie rod end is level or parallel with the knuckle right here. If it looks like it's twisted in one way or the other, just try to level it out as close as possible. And it's going to make sure that you don't damage any of your steering. Okay, now we can go ahead and tighten these up. Once we have them a little snug, we're going to torque these to 41 foot-pounds. Okay friends, another job's in the history books. What's left to do now? Go ahead and safely get your truck back down on the ground and then take it for a road test down to your local alignment shop.